I was halfway home from a double shift at the hospital, bone-tired, when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the radio, some static, maybe a distant voice on a commercial. But when I turned it off, I still heard it. A faint cry. I froze. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The sound was soft, like a kitten almost, but it had a human edge to it. I rolled down my windows, nothing. Turned off the AC, still there. And that's when it hit me. It was coming from the trunk. I pulled over so fast I nearly clipped a mailbox. Heart racing, I jumped out, ran to the back and popped it open. There, lying in an old towel that smelled like motor oil, was a baby. A newborn. Red-faced, tiny, wriggling. Still crying. No car seat. No bag. No bottle. No note. Just a baby. I didn't move for a second. My brain couldn't catch up. I kept thinking, is this real? Am I losing it? My hand started shaking. I reached in and gently picked the baby up. She was warm. Alive. She stopped crying the second I held her. And that's when the panic set in. I looked around. I was parked on a quiet road just outside my neighborhood. No one in sight. No cameras. No open doors. How long had she been there? Who put her in my trunk? Why? I ran back to the front seat, still holding her, and called 911. They kept me on the line while I sat there in shock, rocking her gently, trying not to cry myself. I gave my name, told them what happened. They asked me to wait for the police and an ambulance. 15 minutes later, I was surrounded by flashing lights. The paramedics took the baby, who was thankfully healthy, and the cops started asking me questions. How long was she in there? Do you know the mother? Who has access to your car? I answered everything as best I could. I hadn't left my car unlocked. I hadn't heard anything unusual all day. I had no idea who the baby was or how she got there. I just kept saying over and over, I don't know. I don't know. I swear I don't know. But I could tell they didn't believe me. They looked at me like I was guilty. And somewhere deep down I could feel it too. This wasn't some random thing. Someone had put that baby there. On purpose. And they wanted me to find her. They took me to the station right after the ambulance left with the baby. I was still in shock, still trying to make sense of what had just happened. I thought they'd ask a few questions, maybe thank me for calling it in. I thought they'd help figure out whose baby it was. Instead, they sat me in a cold, windowless room and started grilling me like I was a suspect. When did you last open your trunk? Who have you seen today? Are you sure the baby isn't yours? I blinked at them, confused. What? No. I've never been pregnant. I would know if I had a baby. They didn't laugh. They didn't even look surprised. One of them, a detective with a face like stone, just wrote something down on a clipboard. The other leaned forward, looking at me like I was lying. Is there anyone who might have wanted to leave a baby with you? What about the father? Is there a boyfriend? Husband? That's when I mentioned Mark. My ex. We broke up 6 months ago after a 2-year relationship. He was charming, good-looking, a real smooth talker. But things got bad near the end. Lies, cheating, late nights he couldn't explain. I caught him messaging other women more than once. Eventually, I had enough and ended it. They took down his name, said they'd contact him. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Why would Mark matter now? But the next day, everything changed. They called me back in, said they needed a formal statement and DNA samples. Just to rule things out, they claimed. I agreed, even though it felt weird. I had nothing to hide. Then my phone started blowing up. People at work had heard. One of the paramedics apparently told someone, who told someone else. The story spread like wildfire. Emma found a baby in her car, turned into Emma had a baby and tried to hide it. By the time I showed up for my next shift, my supervisor pulled me aside and told me I was being placed on temporary leave, until the investigation clears up. I wanted to scream. I had done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, Mark started acting strange. He texted me out of the blue. Hey, heard something crazy. Are you okay? No real concern. No shock. Just casual, like he already knew. I asked if the police had talked to him. He said, yeah, nothing major, and then didn't respond again. Something about that made my skin crawl. Everyone was looking at me like I was guilty, like I had something to hide. But I didn't. Someone was setting me up. It was obvious now. The only question was why? A week later, I got the call. Miss Carter, we need you to come in. It's about the DNA results. My stomach dropped. I had almost convinced myself it was all a mistake, that maybe someone had just dumped the baby randomly, and it had nothing to do with me. But that phone call told me otherwise. At the station, they handed me a manila folder and told me to sit. The detective opened it slowly, like he was waiting to watch my face as he spoke. The baby isn't biologically yours, he said, but she is connected to you through someone else. I felt my throat tighten. Who? He slid a sheet across the table and tapped the name at the top. Mark Davis. Your ex-boyfriend. I stared at the paper, trying to make sense of it. That's not possible. He said he had a vasectomy. He said he didn't want kids. The detective didn't react. He just nodded like he'd heard that kind of story before. Well, the DNA doesn't lie. He's the father. I left the station in a daze, that sheet of paper still clutched in my hand. My ears were ringing. My brain refused to process it. Why would Mark's baby end up in my trunk? He was the last person I ever thought would be involved in something like this. And yet, when I thought back to his weird text, how casual he'd been, how he didn't seem surprised, it started to make sense in the worst way. I called him. He didn't answer. I drove to his condo. I didn't even knock, just walked in because I still had a spare key. He was in the kitchen, pouring a drink like nothing was wrong. "You have a baby," I said, holding up the paper. "Your baby. In my trunk." He didn't flinch. He didn't even look guilty. Instead, he smirked. "Guess the DNA came back, huh?" he said. I blinked. "You knew?" "I figured it would come out eventually," he said, sipping his drink. "Not ideal, but whatever. You handled it." "Handled it? You put your newborn baby in my car." "No," he said, cool as ever. "I didn't. But someone did. And now it's your problem." I stood there frozen. His calmness wasn't just creepy, it was terrifying. "You said you couldn't have kids," I whispered. He shrugged. "People lie. You did too, remember?" I didn't know what he meant by that, but I knew one thing. This wasn't an accident. This was part of something bigger. And Mark wasn't just some clueless ex. He was playing a game, and I had just stepped into it. I showed up at his place again 2 days later. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just needed answers. He opened the door like he'd been expecting me. "Back so soon," he said, smiling like this was all some kind of joke. I pushed past him and threw the baby's DNA results on the coffee table. "You're the father. We both know it. But what I don't get is why. Why leave her in my trunk? What the hell is going on, Mark?" He sighed, almost bored, and sat on the couch. "You really want to know?" "Yes," I snapped. "I want the truth." He looked at me for a second, then said it with the same tone he'd used to tell me what he wanted for lunch. "She's Kayla's." My heart stopped. "What?" "The baby. She's Kayla's. Your little sister. Ring any bells?" I felt dizzy. "Kayla? That's not possible. She moved away. We haven't even spoken in over a year." "Yeah," he said with a lazy smile. "Funny how that worked out, huh?" I stood frozen. My chest felt tight. "You were with her?" "For a while now," he said. "Since before we broke up." I covered my mouth. I wanted to throw something, cry, scream, but nothing came out. "She was never supposed to get pregnant," he went on. "But she did. And then she got clingy, emotional, said she didn't want to give the baby up." I whispered, "So you left her?" He tilted his head, that same smug look never leaving his face. "No. She left me. Took off. Went quiet. Probably scared. But she left the baby behind." I shook my head. "And put her in my car?" Mark leaned back, still so calm. "Nah. That part wasn't her idea." I blinked. "What?" He looked me dead in the eye. "It was never about you. She was just a pawn. You're the piece I needed to move." I took a step back. My throat went dry. "Why me?" I asked. "Why me?" He stood now, walked over slowly. "Because you're the perfect distraction. The nurse. The good sister. Everyone would believe you were the one who found the baby. That you just got caught up in it. And while they're busy pointing fingers at you." He trailed off, like it was too obvious to finish. I finally saw it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a setup. Planned. Twisted. Cold. Mark wasn't panicked. He wasn't scared. He was enjoying this. Like he'd already won. And as I stood there in his living room, my mind spinning, one terrifying thought hit me harder than anything else. Kayla didn't just leave. She might be gone for a reason. And I had no idea where she was. I couldn't sleep after that night at Mark's. My mind was racing. I kept thinking about Kayla, where she was, if she was okay, if she had really left her baby behind willingly. Something about Mark's story didn't add up. It felt too clean, too planned. I started digging. I remembered Kayla used to keep a small storage unit. She rented it when she first moved out on her own, and I had helped her move in. She never gave it up. She always said she kept important stuff there. I drove out to the place the next morning. After some lying and smooth talking, I convinced the office manager to let me look. The key still worked. Inside, the unit was a mess. Boxes, old clothes, journals, receipts. But one small plastic bin was sealed and labeled only with her initials, KC. I opened it. That's when I found everything. First, there were papers, insurance forms. My name was on them, my full name, and a policy I'd never signed. I flipped through them, my hands shaking. A life insurance policy for $500,000, and I was listed as the insured. The beneficiary? Mark. I felt sick. Then I found a burner phone. Dead, but I charged it in my car. Once it powered on, there were only a few voicemails, one from Kayla, her voice shaky. "Emma, if you're hearing this, it means I couldn't stop him. Mark, he forged everything. He said no one would miss me if I disappeared. That you'd take the fall. He wanted you to look guilty. The baby, the papers, all of it. Please don't trust him. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do." I sat there in the car, frozen. The baby wasn't abandoned. She was planted. I was supposed to find her, supposed to report her, supposed to be the helpful nurse who suddenly snapped. It was all part of the setup. Mark wasn't just trying to ruin me. He was trying to end me. And Kayla, my own sister, got caught in the middle. Maybe she went along with it at first. Maybe she believed him. But then something changed. She got scared. She ran. And now she was gone. Everything made sense now. The fake concern. The weird way he acted when the cops called. The cold smile when he said it was never about me. He was setting me up for something far worse than being blamed for a baby. He wanted me dead. And unless I did something fast, he might still get what he wanted. After what I found in the storage unit, I knew I had to be smart. If I went straight to the police with no proof, they'd brush me off again. If I confronted Mark the wrong way, he'd disappear, or worse. So I decided to play dumb. I waited a day, then texted him like I was still confused, still broken. Can we talk? I don't know what to believe anymore. He replied in less than 5 minutes. Of course. Let's meet tomorrow. Coffee. Perfect. That night, I bought a small voice recorder and sewed it into the strap of my bag. I spent hours reading online about how to gather evidence without tipping him off. I even made an anonymous post on a legal advice forum, dropping vague hints about someone forging documents in my name. I left digital breadcrumbs in case anything happened to me. The next morning, we met at a little cafe on Main Street. I made sure to pick a spot with cameras and people around, just in case. He looked so normal sitting there, smiling like nothing was wrong. Hey, Em, he said, standing up to hug me. You look tired. Rough week, huh? I nodded, pretending to be nervous. I don't get it, Mark. Why me? Why the baby? Why all this? He sipped his coffee, then leaned back like he was talking about someone else's problem. Things got messy. Kayla wasn't supposed to run. And you've always been the responsible one. People trust you. I kept my face blank. So that made me a good, what? Cover story. He smirked. You could say that. Look, Emma, I didn't want it to be this way. But everything has a price. Kayla didn't understand that. My hands were sweating, but I kept my voice steady. And what about the insurance policy? He paused, just for a second. What insurance policy? I leaned in. Don't lie to me. I found it. With her stuff. My name, your signature, a $500,000 payout if something happened to me. He didn't flinch. If you found it, you already know. What do you want me to say? That you forged it? I asked quietly. He smiled. You can't prove anything. And by the time anyone figures it out, I'll be long gone. That was all I needed. I ended the conversation soon after, said I needed time to think. He told me to take care of myself, which suddenly sounded more like a threat than a kind word. That night, I uploaded the recording to a cloud folder, backed it up 3 times, and shared it with a lawyer friend I barely trusted. I sent another copy to a private investigator someone on Reddit had recommended. Let Mark think I was still the naive one. He had no idea I was building the case that would bring him down. I listened to Kayla's voice message on the burner phone at least a dozen times. Her voice was shaky, rushed, scared. But one line stuck with me. I couldn't stay in Fairfield. I had to disappear. Somewhere quiet, safe. Fairfield was the next town over, about 40 minutes from where we grew up. She used to go there for work sometime. It wasn't much to go on, but it was something. I started calling shelters in the area. Pretending to be a caseworker, I asked if a young woman had checked in recently, about 25, small build, maybe going by a different name. Most places said no, but then one woman hesitated. There's someone who fits that description. She came in a few weeks ago. Said her name was Casey L. Kayla's initials. I drove there the same day. My hands were shaking the whole way. I kept thinking, what if she's not there? What if I'm too late? The shelter was a plain brick building on a quiet street. When I gave the receptionist my name, she looked surprised, then nodded. She said if anyone ever asked for her using that name, to let her know. They took me to a small room with 2 chairs and a table. A few minutes later, Kayla walked in. Her hair was darker now, cut short. She looked thinner, tired, but it was her. We both just stared at each other. Then she burst into tears. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again, she whispered. I stood and hugged her. She cried into my shoulder like a little kid. After a while, we sat down and she told me everything. Mark had been charming at first, sweet, generous, careful. He said he loved her, said they were going to start fresh. But the second she got pregnant, he changed. He told me if I kept the baby, he'd ruin me, she said quietly. Said he'd take her away. Said nobody would believe me if I spoke up. That everyone would think I was crazy or worse. She tried to run, but he followed her, tracked her phone, pressured her to sign over custody. When she refused, he made another plan. He said we'd use Emma, she admitted, looking down at her hand. Said you'd be the perfect cover. That people trusted you too much to ask questions. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I was scared. I thought if I just disappeared, it would stop. But it didn't stop. She gave me a flash drive from her backpack. It has messages, voice recordings, stuff he sent me. Proof. I took it, holding her hand. We're going to fix this, Kayla. Together. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe we had a chance. Mark thought he'd buried us both. But now we were digging our way back. We had everything we needed, proof, recordings, witness statements. But we still needed one final thing. To get Mark to show his true face in front of the right people. That's when Kayla remembered something. The baby, she said. She was born with a rare blood disorder. Nothing too serious, but she needs a special formula. Mark didn't want to list it on the insurance form. Said it made her seem too expensive. That gave us an idea. We contacted a pediatric hospital in the city where Kayla had taken the baby once before, under Mark's name. We told them we needed a follow-up appointment, something urgent. Then we called Mark. Kayla used a new phone, pretended to sound desperate. She's sick, she told him. The baby's getting worse. They need her medical info. If you don't come, they'll get suspicious. He paused, then agreed to meet us there. The trap was set. On the day of the appointment, I wore a wire under my shirt, provided by a contact a lawyer friend connected me with. Kayla brought the flash drive and all the physical documents, insurance fraud, fake signatures, text threats. What we didn't expect was that the FBI would already be there. Apparently, someone from the legal forum I had posted on had flagged the case. They'd been watching Mark for months, tied to real estate scams and forged insurance claims. Our situation was just the final piece of the puzzle. They told us to go ahead with the meeting. Let him talk. Let him sink himself. Mark walked into the hospital waiting room like nothing was wrong. Wearing sunglasses, holding his phone, casual as ever. When he saw both of us, me and Kayla, he didn't even blink. Just smiled. Well, he said. Look who decided to be a family again. I kept my voice steady. She needs her medical file, Mark. The hospital says she has to be seen today. He sighed like we were annoying him. You could have handled this without dragging me into it. Kayla stepped forward. You mean like you handled the insurance policy? The fake signatures? The burner phones? His face tightened for a second. Careful, Kayla. But it was too late. A man in a suit walked over and quietly flashed a badge. Mark Davis? We need to speak with you. Mark turned, ready to argue, but the moment he saw the second agent, his smile finally dropped. On what grounds? He snapped. Fraud, conspiracy, and attempted insurance fraud, the agent said calmly. Among other things, you have the right to remain silent. Kayla and I stood there, side by side, as they cuffed him and walked him out. The baby slept in her car seat nearby, peaceful and unaware. She was the reason we pulled this off. She was the final push we needed to bring him down. The trial started 3 months later. Mark pleaded not guilty to everything, of course. Fraud, forgery, attempted insurance fraud, endangerment of a child. He denied it all. He showed up to court in a nice suit, clean-shaven, acting calm and collected. Like always. Like this was just another deal to close. He smiled at the jury, smirked at the reporters, tried to charm the judge. But none of it worked this time. The prosecution had everything. The forged insurance forms with my name on them. The flash drive full of messages and threats. The wire recording from the cafe. The DNA results. And then there was the baby. Her medical file. Her birth certificate. Everything tied back to Mark. Kayla went first. She was nervous, but she told the truth. About how Mark manipulated her, threatened her, tried to use her, and then the baby to cover his plan. I watched her shake as she sat on the stand, but she didn't break. She looked right at the jury and said, I thought I was in love with him, but he never loved me. He just wanted control. Then it was my turn. Walking up to the witness stand, I felt every eye in the room on me. I took a deep breath and looked straight ahead. I'm a nurse, I began. I help people. That's what I do. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I told them everything. How I found the baby in my trunk. How the police treated me like a suspect. How I found Kayla. How we worked together to stop him. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I told the story clearly, step by step, just like I'd lived it. Mark's lawyer tried to twist things, suggested I made it all up, that I was bitter, that I planted the evidence myself. But no one believed it. The facts were too solid. The recordings were too real. The plan was too clear. When I looked at the jury, I could see it. They knew who was lying. Mark barely looked at me during my testimony. For once, he wasn't smiling. The trial lasted a week. The jury took less than 4 hours to decide. Guilty. On all counts. When the judge read the sentence, 15 years in federal prison, Mark finally cracked. His jaw clenched, and he shouted something I couldn't hear. The guards pulled him back, and that was the last time I saw him. I stood up, turned to Kayla, and hugged her. We did it. He thought he could destroy us. Thought he could use a baby as a weapon. Thought we'd fall apart. But we didn't. And in the end, I had the last word. In court. In truth. In freedom. Life didn't go back to normal. Not really. After the trial, the charges against me were officially dropped. My name was cleared. I got my job back at the hospital. People apologized, said they always knew something was off. But I remembered how they looked at me before, how quick they were to judge. I didn't forget. Kayla started therapy. She moved into a small apartment nearby, walking distance from Mom. She was trying, really trying, to be a better sister, to be a mother. But it was hard for her. The trauma, the guilt, it was a lot. So we made a decision together. We'd raise the baby as a team. Lily. That's what we named her. She had Kayla's nose, Mark's dark eyes. But she smiled like no one else. She slept beside me most nights now, in a crib next to my bed. I kept the baby monitor on full volume. I always listened for any sound, any movement. Even when she slept peacefully, I didn't. Some nights, I still heard crying. Not hers, mine. From that night in the car. That horrible sound from the trunk that I'll never forget. Sometimes I'd get out of bed, tiptoe to the garage, and open the trunk. Just to check. Just to be sure there was nothing there. That it was over. But I didn't tell anyone that. I went back to work, but I was different. Quieter. Sharper. I didn't smile as easily. I didn't let people in as quickly. Trust was something I'd have to relearn. People called me strong. Brave. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know I still kept the wire recorder in a locked drawer. That I still had printed copies of every piece of evidence. That I checked Lily's room window every night before bed. Mark was behind bars. But the damage he caused? That would take years to undo. And yet, Lily changed everything. She was the only good thing to come out of the nightmare. Her laugh, the way she reached out for my hand, how her whole face lit up when she saw her bottle. She didn't care about the past. She only knew we were there for her. Kayla and I still had a long way to go. But we were trying. For her. Sometimes when Lily sleeps, I sit next to her crib and just watch her breathe. I wonder what kind of person she'll become. I wonder what I'll tell her one day, when she asks where she came from. I don't know yet. But I know this, she saved me. She reminded me what it means to fight for something. Even if the cries still echo in my dreams, they're not the end of my story. They were just the beginning.
Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.